Good evening, everyone, and welcome to back to my channel. So today we're going to talk about cicadas. I love cicadas. Um, I have always had a fascination with these insects. They've been around. I've gone through, I think, at least three broods. And we'll talk about what a brood is and things in a little bit. We'll wait a few seconds to let people uh, get situated and get logged in. Um, But yeah, so I'm really excited about today's topic. So I have some preserved specimens here that I'll show you guys a little bit later from a brood that occurred 3 years ago here in Cincinnati. So I'm gonna get started in about 10 seconds. Let me get the screens and stuff all set up. If you guys haven't subscribed already, I would appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel. Um, I thank all of you that have subscribed, all of you that tune in to all of my shows that I have each evening. It's much appreciated. It's because of you guys that I keep going. You guys want to be educated, so I got a lot of stuff to educate you about. If you'd like to also subscribe and be a patron on my Patreon, that'd be much appreciated as well. You can visit patreon.com/urban farm sister. And you can subscribe in one of those different brackets that I have. Uh, well, to me, they're not bad at all, Frank. So Frank has a question. He said, "How bad will this invasion of cicadas be?" They're not bad at all. And so we're going to explain why they're not bad and things like that. But this one's not going to be a big one. The big one is going to be next year, in 2021, because it's going to take over pretty much the whole eastern part of the United States. It's going to be Brood 10 is going to erupt out, and it's going to be erupting in multiple states. But this one right here, it's only in North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia. So let me turn these banners off. All right, so I'm going to get started because we got a lot of slides to go through this evening. Computer, hope it cooperates. All right, so for those of you that do not know me, my name is Nadia Ruffin. I have 2 degrees. I have a bachelor's in agriculture from the Ohio State University. My focus was animal sciences, and I minored in pre-veterinary medicine and also entomology. I had dreams of going to vet school, but things didn't work quite out as well as I wanted to because I got sick in undergrad and my GPA tanked. So I ended up getting a master's in entomology from the University of Nebraska. So we'll talk about what an entomologist is in a second, but that's what I am, an entomologist. I'm a scientist and a farmer. I'm an urban farmer here in Cincinnati. I'm also a beekeeper. And beekeeping goes along with that entomology. But what I do here is I grow produce on an empty lot that I purchased and turned into an urban farm. And I also teach hydroponics. I grow in hydroponics. I also have chickens. You guys saw the chickens. If you watch my other 2 videos, talked about those. So I own chickens as well. I used to be a disease investigator in the county that I live in right now. Um, I was a disease investigator, so that's a person that investigates and tries to prevent disease outbreaks here in the county. I have years of experience in floriculture. My family owned a flower shop here called Blossoms Florist. And so after I graduated from Ohio State, I worked in research and research, but mostly veterinary research. So I've had jobs at University of Georgia, the Ohio State University, the Ohio Department of Agriculture, and the University of Cincinnati, working in research, different research projects, mostly involving animals. And so it was animal research and diseases that animals can get or that we can get, or things that they get that we trying to find a cure for. So yes. Frank, we'll talk about all of that, how they make that noise and the mating sound and all that. Good evening, yo folks. Okay, so what's entomology? Basically, entomology, it means the study of insects and their relatives and other invertebrates. So other invertebrates would things be like annelids, which are worms, arthropods, which are insects, spiders, ticks, centipedes, and millipedes. But all of those are not insects. The spiders, ticks, and centipedes and millipedes, they do not fall under the class Insecta. Then also things like mollusks also seem to always fall under entomology. So, you know, all the invertebrates are usually what fall under entomology, and then it can break off into different other, specialties and things like that. So I'm an entomologist. Like I said, I have a master's degree from the University of Nebraska. And pretty much my whole life, I've always been interested in insects. I love insects. Ever since I was a little child, I was always, just intrigued by the insect world. I used to go around catching all types of insects and just studying them for hours and things. And so, when I got to high school, I became interested in insects that, transmitted disease. So that was things like mosquitoes and ticks and kissing bugs and all those types of things. And I was also interested in animals. I've always liked all animals, not just insects, but all animals. And so I was very interested in zoonotic diseases, which are diseases that are transmitted from animal to human, and then diseases that are transmitted by insect or arthropod vectors. And so when I went to college, that was like my main focus. I was always just interested in like disease transmission and science and how how an animal or an insect can be a vector or a reservoir for these things. And so that's what took me into the whole realm of entomology. When I went and got my master's degree, I focused on medical entomology. Those, like I say, those are the insects that cause disease or can transmit disease, or kind of like a nuisance. They're kind of pests and things that are on animals and humans. But after I got my degree, I found out people didn't understand insects at all. It didn't matter if they were arthropods, if they were it didn't matter if they were insects or whatever. If they were ones that transmitted disease, people just didn't understand it. All of them, their first instinct was to, well, I'm just going to kill it because I don't understand it and I'm scared of it and I just want it gone. And so I just started educating people through social media about insects and about entomology, and trying to get more people of color interested in this field, because it's a very interesting field, but also a very needed one that needs a lot more people in it. Insects, they impact our lives, not just with disease, as well as, they can destroy crops, they can destroy our houses. We also have beneficial insects. We use them for pollination and things like that. So teaching people about entomology and the insects and the arthropods that fall underneath there um, has opened up a window opportunity for people that didn't even know that it was an option. So when I went to the schools, I had a lot of children that were, interested. I had a whole entomology club, and I taught a lot of children about different insects and arthropods, and they became interested in the field. So, I achieved my goal with that, but I want to take it even further. So the reason for this live, I want to dispel some information, some myths and things that people are saying about cicadas. I want to educate about cicadas. Um, and educate, especially since they're about to emerge in those 3 states that I mentioned in the beginning. We have this isolation thing, and I don't want people thinking like, the world's about to end because cicadas are about to emerge, because that's the first thing people think. Oh, They call them locusts for one thing, and they're not locusts, and we'll talk about what that is and all that stuff. But I want to, hopefully help people overcome some fears as well. When they came out here in Ohio 3 years ago, I did this class in person, and I brought cicadas in that I had caught, and I brought in like the nymphs, and we'll talk about what all that stuff is. And I allowed people to first I educated them about them like this presentation, and then I let them hold them. I brought males and females in, so they could hear the noise. They could see what the nymphs look like before they emerge as adults and things like that. So um, I actually had people that were, for their whole life, they were terrified of these things. They were actually holding them, and they were making noises while they were holding them when they weren't trying to run and things. And so that's what I try to do is I just try to educate and show people like the things that we're fearing, we really don't need to fear because, it's nothing there. It's not going to hurt you. Um, but yeah, so that's why I do this presentation. I wish it could have been in person, but we had to do all this social distancing and all that. But hopefully it helps. And if you know anybody that has a fear of cicadas, hopefully you can share this video with them, and they'll learn something. Yes, Frank, the Ohio State University. All right, so cicadas are coming. The periodical cicada, which is part of brood 9, and we'll talk about what these broods are in a second, will emerge in the spring of 2020 in North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia. The last time this brood emerged was in 2003. So this emergence will take place in the following locations. So if you live in Virginia, the municipalities of Blacksburg, Bland, Callens, Christiansburg, Covington, Dry Pond, Ferrum, Martinsville, Roanoke, Salem, Vinton, and many more. This is not just limited to these areas. There could be some emergence in other areas, but these are the ones that they know for a fact that they're most likely going to emerge. Some more Virginia counties are, I'm not sure how you say that, Allegany, Bland, Franklin, Henry, Montgomery, Patrick, Pittsylvania, and Roanoke. And North Carolina municipalities is Chestnut Hill, Ennis, Francisco, Hayes, Kernersville, McGrady, Miller Creek, Mount Airy, North Wilkesboro, Purlear, Thurman, Westfield, and more. And North Carolina counties is going to be Ashe, Allegheny, Forsyth, Stokes, Surrey, and Wilkes. And then West Virginia municipalities, there's Camp Creek, Elmhurst, Hinton, Jumping Branch, Spanishburg, and more. And then West Virginia counties is Fayette, Greenbrier, Mercer, Monroe, Pocahontas, and Summers. So, do any of you live in those counties that are watching? Or live in these states? So, what is a periodical cicada? Well, let's first talk about a little taxonomy. So, we'll talk about classification. So the periodical cicada, it belongs to the phylum Arthropod or Arthropoda. These are the arthropods. So these are the animals that have an exoskeleton. They have jointed and appendage legs, or they have mouth parts. Depending on the class, they can have antenna, wings, and things like that. So these are all invertebrates. They belong to the class Insecta. So cicadas are insects. They belong to the order Hemiptera. So Hemiptera, when you say something is a bug, you are politically correct when you talk about anything that falls under the class Hemiptera. So these are the true bugs. So you have cicadas, you have hoppers, like the leaf hoppers and the tree hoppers. You have aphids, and there's many other things like stink bugs, kissing bugs, assassin bugs. All of those, they fall under this order Hemiptera. And we'll talk about why. Its characteristics of they have piercing, sucking mouth parts, and the shape of their bodies and things like that. So they belong to the family Cicadidae. Their genus is Magicicada. And one species that we're going to talk that I know is going to emerge this year is the Septidecim. But there are three different species that are going to emerge, and we'll talk about the different species in a second. So the types of periodical cicadas, I'm sorry. There are a total of 7 different species of periodical cicadas. They can be divided into 2 categories, 13-year and 17-year. Depending on the species, it takes this long for them to complete their life cycle. Each species has a distinct mating call. The 17-year periodical cicadas are distributed across the eastern, upper Midwestern, and Great Plains states within the U.S. The 13-year cicadas occur in the southern and Mississippi Valley states. There is a slight overlap of the two in some regions as you get into that Midwestern plains and the southern part. There can be some overlap, but for the most part, the 17-year and the 13 years are pretty much separate when they emerge. But periodical cicadas only occur in the United States. They do not occur anywhere else. Hey, Joe Tut, how are you? So I don't know if you can see this table very well, but these are the 7 species of Magicicadas. So we have the septendecim, we have Cassini, we have septum decula, we have neotridecim, then we had tridecim, then you had Trides Cassini, and then we had Tridecula. So the top 3 that you see in the 17-year cycle, these are the ones that are actually going to emerge. So all 3 of these will be present when the emergence occurs in North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia. They're all 17-year cicadas, and they'll be emerging in that region. Does anybody have any questions so far? All right. So when I was saying this is brood 9. Basically, what I'm talking about, every time there's an emergence, they emerge in a big group, and they call that big group of periodical cicadas a brood. The periodical cicadas emerge in groups called broods during their 13-year or 17-year life cycles in distinct regions. There were supposedly back in the 1800s, actual entomologist. He supposedly found 30 different broods that occurred. So what he did, he assigned a Roman numeral to these 30 different broods of periodical cicadas. 17 distinct broods with a 17-year cycle, to which he assigned brood numbers 1 through 17, with the emerging years of 1893 through 1909. Plus, there's 13 broods with a 13-year cycle that he assigned the 18 to 30 Roman numerals. So again, he found these broods during the 1893 to 1905. Today, though, we can only actually locate, or we only know of that 15 known that are actually still exist. There was some speculation that 30 was too many. It might have been more like 20. And then there's a few broods that are actually extinct now, that they no longer exist for many reasons. And we'll talk about that at the end. So what triggers their emergence? So they will typically start to emerge beginning in mid-May and ending in late June. And they will emerge. Some of them will start emerging a little bit early. Basically, what has to happen is that ground temperatures at least 8 inches below will have to be at least 64 degrees for a consistent amount of days. And that will trigger them to emerge once they've gone through their whole cycle. So if it's a 13-year cycle, once they've reached that 13 years, then they'll know it's time for them to emerge. And then they will merge based off temperature as well as moisture that hits the soil. So a nice warm rain will often trigger their emergence once those ground temperatures are at least at 64 degrees Fahrenheit. So now we're going to talk about some anatomy and physiology of periodical cicadas. So like I said, they are insects. So they have Characteristics of most insects: they have 2 pairs of see-through membranous wings. They have black head, a thorax, and an abdomen. They have 6 legs. They have red oranges-looking compound eyes. Also on the top of their eyes, they have what are called ocelli, which these are simple eyes, and they actually detect light. They have a pair of antennae. That's their sensory organs. Their size usually ranges from 0.75 to 2.25 inches, and that kind of depends on the species that you're looking at. They have piercing, sucking mouth parts, so they do not have mouth parts that are able to chew. So when people say a cicada bit them, they're lying because they do not have mandibles to actually chew or bite anything. Hey, appreciable assets, how are you doing? Um, Cicadas, they do not have chewing mouth parts, like I just said, so they cannot bite or chew, and they do not feed on vegetation. Now, they do feed on plant sap with those piercing, sucking mouth parts. So here in this picture, we have, here's the mouth parts right here. It kind of looks like a needle. And that what they do, what they do is they will take the piercing, sucking mouth parts, which is right here, and I wish this little box would disappear. They stick this down into the tree. Oh, go away. So the labium, which is that piercing, sucking part, they'll stick that down into the tree, and they'll suck the sap out of a tree. The same thing with their nymphs that live underground for those 13 or 17 years. They will actually suck the sap out of the roots of trees and other plants that they find where they find roots underground. So I think we have a question here. What's the I'll say so Frank Williams wants to know what's the coldest temperature cicadas can exist in. Um so like I said, they want to merge to the ground temperatures or at least 64 degrees. Um Anything below that, most insects cannot survive. I mean, they'll be active at like 50 or so, but they're going to be very sluggish. They need warm temperatures to actually warm their muscles and things so they can actually fly and stuff. So, um if it's like freezing temperatures, no, they're not going to be able to survive. They'll actually die. And so that's why they never emerge during like a, early spring. They always wait till it's almost late spring heading into summer, because they have to be kept warm. They're made above ground, and we'll talk about that in a second. I have all that information for you. So we'll talk about their reproduction in a second. So here we have a male and we have a female cicada. So the female is here on the left, and she has, how you can identify her versus the male is that she has a ovipositor, and this is how she will actually lay her eggs inside the branches of trees. The males do not have an ovipositor. The males, we'll talk about them as well because they are the only ones that make the sound, and we'll talk about how they go about doing that in a second. But this is how you tell the two apart. So if you guys ever pick one up, I pick them up all the time. They're harmless. They don't bite or anything. They don't let off any toxic smells or anything like that. But if you ever pick them up and you have two of them, you can compare the two. Usually the males are slightly bigger than the females. And like I say, the females will have this ovipositor that they use to actually lay eggs. But again, they have the piercing, sucking mouth parts, both males and females, and they both feed on plant sap. So only the males make sounds. Males make sounds for two reasons. They use it to attract mates and for protection from predators. So when I say they use that sound to protect themselves from predators, what they do is males will congregate in the area together and they will warn other cicadas in the area, say like if it's a bird present or something else that will eat them, they will all start chiming together, and birds hate the noise, so it'll scare birds away. The way they do this though is they have this organ on the side of their body called a timbal. And what it is basically on the side of their abdomen. what they do is this timbal muscle it's pulled inward and it bends and distorts the membrane and it creates that clicking sound you hear them making. So when you have lots of males together, that sound can be very, very loud. But basically, this little bitty tiny organ is what makes all that noise. So if you guys live in North Carolina, Virginia, or West Virginia, you're not as scared of them. Hopefully, after this presentation, you won't be scared. If you find a male, I want you to pick them up so you can actually see these organs on them. And when you pick them up, they'll actually make noise too because they don't want you handling them. And like I said, they won't bite or anything, but you can actually see that organ and you can see how it's pulled in and it distorts as they're making that noise. So Appreciable Assets wants to know what are their predators. So their predators are birds, raccoons, pretty much any animal that will eat insects or eat other animals. They are fair game to that, including humans. Your dogs and cats will eat them. Lizards, frogs, snakes, all types of things. So pretty much they're food for a multitude of animals. So during this time frame when they emerge in huge numbers, like in the millions, because they know for a fact that they're going to be overtaken by a lot of predators. So they emerge in large numbers so that they have enough, cicadas to mate and, carry on those genetics 17 or 13 years from now. But yes, they are prey to a number of things. And we'll talk about if they're toxic or not to your dogs and cats at the end. I have a little trivia. All right, so the periodical cicada life cycle. Periodical cicadas, they undergo what is called incomplete metamorphosis. So that means they have an egg, a nymph. So the nymph kind of looks like the adult, but doesn't have the wings. And then you have the adult. So it's not like a caterpillar that goes through complete metamorphosis where they have an egg, larva, a pupa stage, and then they emerge from that pupa, and then you have the adult. Incomplete metamorphosis, like I say, it's also called gradual metamorphosis. So basically, you have an egg hatch, and then you have this little insect that kind of looks like the adults, but not quite, and it gradually molts, which means sheds its skin, and it eventually will turn into that adult. For them to reproduce, it's pretty much like any other insects. The males and females, they will mate. After the females mate, they will go and find a tree and they will lay their eggs inside the branches of a tree. Now, they will not damage the trees. Now, if the tree is like a sapling or something, there could be damage. So a lot of times when cicadas are about to emerge, they'll suggest that you cover your saplings. But if the tree is like 5 years or older, it should be all right. It should be able to withstand the cicadas coming in and laying eggs in the branches. They will recover. The cicadas won't kill the trees, but a sapling may kind of suffer. So it's just suggested that you cover those with like some type of insect netting to keep them off of there. But basically, this female makes slits in the branches using her ovipositor, like I showed you guys earlier on the female, and she lays her eggs in there. The eggs hatch, and the nymphs, the eggs will hatch in about 6 to 8 weeks after the female lays them. And the nymphs will fall from the tree or they'll climb down the tree and they'll head to the ground. Then they'll dig themselves into the ground until it finds a root, it could be multiple feet deep. They dig pretty deeply. And I mean, like they're going to be underground for at least, depending on the species, 13 or 17 years. So, they got to dig deep enough and they got to find a root deep enough that, it's going to sustain them. So it takes 13 to 17 years, depending on the species, feeding off of the roots of trees, shrubs, and grass. Cicadas will undergo 5 instars, which means they'll molt 5 times before they actually turn into adults. So they'll actually be molting underground, and then when they emerge that last molt before they emerge into adult, that's the last time they will actually shed their skin. So Frank wants to know: is there a way to determine if the sound they make is defense or mating? Um, they know if the sound is defensive or mating. I guess you could watch them. If you see like birds and things flying around the trees that they are on, you could probably tell if it's a different noise versus if they're just there trying to attract mates. Um, but they know their distinct calls. So each species has their own distinct call as well. So their females know what their males sound like. There's really never been any crossing of the species. Like I said, they distinctly know what their particular species sound is, and so they will the males will find a female, they'll do their little mating call, and if she is receptive, she'll flap her wings and then they'll mate. Good questions. So in this picture here, we have the mating, we have her putting the eggs in the tree, then we have the nymph coming out, the first instar nymph. It's digging itself into the ground. Then when it has gone through its whole life cycle of that 13 to 17 years, whatever one species it is, it'll emerge from the ground. It'll climb up on a tree or a blade of grass, and then it will molt that last time. It'll come out like a white creamy color before it hardens. Its wings will kind of be shriveled up, and so they have to pump their hemolymph. Their blood is called hemolymph. Pump it through their wings, and it'll expand the wings, and then they will harden, and they'll get their black color and their membranous, clear-looking wings. And then the adults live for a short period of time, and during that time, what they're doing is, they're mating, and then the cycle starts all over again. So here we have a picture of a female ovipositing into a tree. So here's her ovipositor right here, and then here's her piercing sucking mouth part right here. So she's actually feeding also. So you can see how this occurs. So if you guys are in an area where this is about to happen, and if the tree is low enough where you can see, why don't you go outside and see if you can see this actually happening once they, been out for a little while and they started to mate and things. So here is a picture of the eggs, how they look inside the tree. Um, once she had did those slits and laid them in there. So after that whole cycle of 13 years or 17 years has transpired, and it's time for them to emerge, there are signs that you can look for to see if they are emerging. First of all, like I say, ground temperatures are going to be very important. So once it hits 64 degrees, you can take ground temperatures if you're in a region that's going to have an emergence, and you can actually see if the ground temperatures are warm enough, and then you might start seeing evidence of this, of them emerging. So you'll see what are called chimneys. They call them turrets. Or then you'll start seeing holes in the ground. They don't always make these chimneys. It's just a lot of times when the ground, if it's really real wet from raining, when they're emerging, it'll make like these little chimneys in the ground. But for the most part, you're going to find these little holes that they emerge from. Now there are cicadas that are annual cicadas that emerge as well, and they follow this same type of pattern of emerging from the ground. They all stay underground as the nymphs. Um, so there's annual cicadas, but then we have these periodical ones that occur in these large numbers. So any other questions before I go on? So the fifth instar nymph will crawl up a tree or blade of grass, and it will start to molt or shed their exoskeleton to emerge as an adult. So here we have the nymph crawling up the tree, and it'll shed that skin. So usually what you find after they've emerged, if you didn't see the actual adult emerge out of there, um, you will see just that exoskeleton left on like the trees or like on blades of grass and stuff when they have their emergence. Again, if you have annual cicadas, which most people do throughout the United States, um, you will actually see these exoskeletons for the annual cicadas every late spring or early summer. So, oops, it's kind of over too far. So that new cicada that emerges is called an imago. And I have a video that I will share on the school website of when I caught some 3 years ago. I actually had them um emerge from the exoskeleton, and then it turned into the adult. So this was the end of the video. It took about 45 minutes for it to actually push its way all the way out of there. So the video is kind of long, but you guys get to see the whole process. It's called an imago because it's a newly emerged adult before it completely matures. Um, the imagos are called, I'm sorry, they're colored like this creamy, like I said, creamy white color. They're not black yet, but the wings will expand. They're kind of shriveled up like here in this picture over here. And then what happens is they pump that hemolymph through there, and then they expand out to the wings that you guys are accustomed to seeing on them. And then they'll harden, and then they'll turn black like this one right here. So this is how they all come out looking. And they always emerge at nighttime. The reason being because if they did this during the day, they would definitely be prey. Because they stand out like a sore thumb, and at night they can emerge at night, and under the cover of darkness, a lot of predators won't see. I won't say every predator won't see them because there's a lot of animals and things that are active at night that are hunting anyway. But most of the emergence occurs at night. Let's see if I can get this video to play. So this isn't the whole video. This is just like 1 little minute of it, but this is what you'll get to see, like it actually come out of that exoskeleton, and you'll see the shriveled up wings, and as they start to expand and things like that. So I had some more that were emerging, and they were at different stages. And then like the one next to it, it had already emerged the day before, so it had hardened and was, what the adult form would look like. So the adults only live for only a few weeks. By mid-July, they are all gone. So they all die out. The eggs laid will hatch in about 6 to 8 weeks after being laid, and then the life cycle starts all over again. So, like I said, those nymphs will emerge. They will drop from the trees. They'll go underground. They'll dig underground, so many feet deep, find a root, and they'll start the whole process over. So it'll take 13 or 17 years again. So I have a little trivia here. Because I know people they say so many things that they don't understand. They they tell all types of stories and myths, and so I want to see where you guys are at as far as cicadas and what your knowledge is. So, true or false? Cicadas, they can bite and sting. Is this true or is this false? I want you guys to answer that. So I'll wait a second because I know it's a delay. So does anybody have an answer? True or false? Cicadas bite and sting. Well, I already told you about the biting part. Did I say they bit or did I not say they bite? So Frank said cicadas are completely harmless. So he is correct. Cicadas do not bite or sting. They do not have stingers. They do not have chewing mouth parts. So it's cicadas bite or sting, false. Cicadas have piercing sucking mouth parts that they use to suck sap from trees. They do not have teeth. They do not have chewing mouth parts, so they cannot actually bite you. And cicadas do not have stingers. Um, So they're pretty much harmless. They don't produce any type of toxins or anything. So next question. Oops, I cheated. So true or false, cicadas are locusts here to destroy all of our vegetation. Good job, Frank. You guys kind of saw the answer. I don't know if you saw it or not, but it showed up on there. So true or false, cicadas are locusts here to destroy our vegetation. Is this true or is this false? Are they even locusts? Do you know what locusts are? Yeah, I know you saw it. So it's false. And the reason being, locusts are actually grasshoppers. So when you hear about locusts and they came in and they wiped out, all the vegetation in the area, those are actually grasshoppers. Cicadas are not grasshoppers, so they should not even be called locusts. Locusts are short-horned grasshoppers in the family Acridae that will swarm in large numbers when their resources become depleted. Locusts have chewing mouthparts and will devour vegetation while they swarm. Um, Again, cicadas, they do not have chewing mouthparts. They have piercing, sucking mouthparts that they use to feed on sap from plants. They do not feed on actual leaves or vegetation. Cicadas are not locusts. They're not even the same order of insects. Like I told you, cicadas aren't true bugs. All right, true or false? Cicadas carry diseases. I've heard this too. People told me they got bit. First, they told me they got bit by a cicada, and then it made them sick. And so I just had to look at them like, no, that didn't happen. Um, but are true or false? Cicadas carry diseases. The answer is false. Cicadas do not transmit any diseases. um, True or false? Cicadas are blind. Are cicadas blind? So they have those big red eyes. You think they're blind? I have some cicadas right here. Have a preserved one. You think they're blind? Yes or no? So Frank, yes, that's correct. They do not carry diseases. So Frank said, he said no. They have two eyes on the top of their head. So the answer is false. They are not blind. They can see actually very well. They also have, like I said, those other eyes called ocelli, where they actually detect light. So cicadas can see quite well. That's why when you approach them, they will fly away. They also can sense vibrations as well through their feet and through their antenna. All right, true or false? Cicadas hibernate or sleep underground for 13 to 17 years. So while they're underground, are they hibernating and sleeping? Or what are they doing? Is it true or false that they hibernate and sleep? Or is it true that they hibernate and sleep, or is it false that they hibernate and sleep? What you think appreciable assets? Do you think they hibernate and sleep, or do you think they're active? Bonus question. Are they loud? Well, yeah, they are loud, but that's how they attract the mates. So, and that's how they protect themselves. So, yes, um, they can be very loud. I forget the decimeters of how much if you have a group of males singing together. Um, it was louder than something that was really really loud. I can't remember what they compared it to, but yeah, they are very loud. So Frank said they do not hibernate. Being in the ground is part of their life cycle. So that is correct. Uh, actually, the answer is false, but his answer is correct. That they do not hibernate. They're actually they're actually very active underground all those years, and nymphs can burrow deep underground. Um, they've measure like at least 5 feet deep. They can go underground, and they feed on trees and other plant roots. They also molt and undergo 5 nymphal instars. So, um, yeah, they're very active. They're not sleeping. They're moving around, they're crawling around, and things like that. True or false? Cicadas are attracted to lawnmowers. Hmm. What about this one? What do you guys think? Do you think they're attracted to lawnmowers or not? Hmm. Some live in them. Some live in what? Lawnmowers? They don't live in a lawnmower. So the answer is true. They are attracted to lawnmowers. Cicadas can be attracted to lawnmowers because they pick up on the vibrations that mimic the male call or the male song. So you could indeed have some flying towards you while cutting grass or using other motorized tools outside. So if you're outside doing lawn work and things, you could attract males to you because they think that is other males. So yes, they are attracted to lawnmowers. They don't live in lawnmowers. They stay up in trees. All right, true or false? All cicadas live in 13 or 17-year life cycles. Is that true or false? So what y'all think? Do y'all think all cicadas live this life cycle, or no? Yes or no? I mean, I talked about some other ones and I said a key word in there. So that would suggest something. So true or false, all cicadas live in 13 or 17-year life cycles. So yo folks said false, and he also said not all are the same. Frank said true. Cicadas live in 13 and 17-year life cycles. So we have two conflicting answers here. So the answer is false. Only periodical cicadas have this life cycle. Like I said in the presentation, only periodical cicadas are here in the United States. Um, there are thousands of other cicadas found around the world and also that live here in the United States along with these periodical ones. Most other cicadas have annual life cycles. So you have, like, every summer you'll hear cicadas outside. Those are annual cicadas. They look like this one in the middle right here. These are annual cicadas. But these cicadas, I forget where this one was. I think this one was in South America somewhere. So they're everywhere. That it's warm temperatures and things. And they come in a variety of colors and things like that. So not all of them carry this 13 to set or 17-year life cycle. So Frank said that fact is amazing to me, and yo, folks said yeah. All right, let's see here. True or false? People can eat cicadas. Sorry, Frank. All right, so true or false? People can eat cicadas. Have y'all ever ate a cicada? So the answer is true. Cicadas are prey to numerous predators, including humans. Humans throughout the history of periodical cicadas have feasted on them. Just make sure you remove the wings and the legs if you're going to consume them. Those parts of the body can be tough and they do not digest, and they can also cause digestive upset. So just make sure you remove the wings and the legs. That's with any insects that you eat. There's a multitude of insects uh, that um, you can feed on. Just make sure if they have wings that you remove the wings and you also remove the legs because the protein, it just doesn't break down um, in those parts of the body very well, and it can upset the stomach. He said it tastes like chicken. All right, true or false? My pet or your pet can get sick eating cicadas. True or false? Oh, you have okay. Frank Williams said nobody eats cicadas. You'd be surprised they do. There's a whole following of people when they emerge in areas. They'll make pizzas with them on them. They'll roast them. Make like um, the sticks. Like they'll have roasted cicadas on there. They fry them. They mix them into things. So yes, people eat them all the time. Appreciable Access said they taste like chicken. um, Yo folks said he has never eaten any insects yet. Uh, you should try it. I mean, the whole process is called entomophagy. Outside of the United States, people eat insects all the time. You can go down to Mexico and they eat They eat caterpillars. They'll eat grasshoppers. They'll eat all types of stuff. Beetle larvae. Go outside of the United States. In the United States, we think we're too good to eat insects, but in reality, if you eat shrimp and crab and things, you're eating the closest relative to insects. So I guess in a sense, we are eating them. I've tried grasshoppers. I've had crickets, and I've had mealworms. So yo folks said true parts of it can disrupt the digestive system. Yes, so back to our question. True or false, my pet can get sick eating cicadas. This is true. Dogs and cats can eat cicadas, although they may try to engorge themselves um, on the cicadas. The wings and legs can cause digestive upset, so they may throw them back up, or they could cause diarrhea as well. But they are not toxic. So if you're in an area where they're emerging, just be mindful that your dog or cat will try to eat them, and just um, don't let them gorge on them, because they will, and they can make them sick. So Frank Williams over here capping on me because I went to the Ohio State University. He said only we eat cicadas. Yes, we're part of an elite group of people that eat cicadas. You wish you were on our level. Okay, see what? See. So yeah, cicadas are prey to many animals. Like we talked about that during the presentation. Um, so like I say, birds, reptiles, other mammals, humans, everybody enjoys cicadas when they emerge because there's so many of them. True or false? There are repellents and insecticides that'll keep cicadas away from me. Are you? Is that true or false? True or false? So you can get some. Can you get some like some Raid or some what's some other repellents people use? Other crazy stuff y'all be coming up with. Um, you can get your citronella. You think that'll be effective against the? Think that'll be effective against cicadas if you get some citronella or some off, or you get your crystals or something. You think that'll be effective against them? Frank Williams said this is good stuff. He's enjoying this presentation. Um, he's yo folks said false. They are indestructible. Um, why is the light flashing? I hope the power doesn't go out. We had some storms here yesterday, so powers were going in and out all day in different areas. So Frank said false. Insecticides do not work. So let's see if he's correct or not. And he's correct. Cicadas are clumsy flyers and they may accidentally land on you, but there are no repellents that will prevent this from happening. So yeah, there's nothing you can spray on yourself that's gonna keep cicadas away. They really aren't, out seeking you. They just happen to be, if you're walking in the path and they're flying, they can't like reposition and turn the other way like some other insects can do. So they'll just fall and land right on you. Cicadas are just loud, nothing more, nothing less. Yeah, they're loud, but it's only for a few weeks, and then they're all gone, and then you have to wait 17 years again to enjoy them. Again, they are harmless. They do not bite or sting, so you don't have anything to worry about. They land on you. You can just simply remove them. Just pick them up with their wings. Where their wings are, you can just pick them up. Like I'll show you on the one I have here, the specimen, and you can just simply remove them from your body. All right, so we're gonna talk about deforestation really quickly. Because this is having a big effect on cicada populations. So there was a specific cicada population study that was conducted by by Indiana University. They researched the effects of cutting forests down and what that has on um, cicada populations. They compared data taken from 1902 to 1987 and 1988. And what they noticed that the population of cicadas in the north has decreased by large numbers due to cutting trees down. Also, urban sprawl has taken away soil, replacing with concrete eliminates nymph habitat. So the nymphs do not have underground space to go to, and then they don't have the trees that they need to feed off of those roots and plants and vegetation if there's concrete there. So as a result of that, cicada populations are declining. Like I talked about earlier in the presentation, some broods are actually extinct. So we have of that 30, we only have 15 that exist um, regularly now. But as urban sprawl continues, as deforestation continues, we may even get reduced broods from the 15 that we have. So just know that, certain humans' way of treating the environment is not only impacting, um, any type of animal. It's also impacting, the cicadas. It's impacting humans. It's affecting the whole ecosystem. So if these animals disappear, it'll impact other animals. Like I told you, there's a lot of animals that rely on this big, huge emergence to actually have something to feed on. And if this emergence doesn't occur, then those animals, they're depleted of a resource that they rely on, every 13 or 17 years. Frank Williams said, did I say enjoy? Did I say enjoy what? Enjoy the cicadas? Eating them? Oh yeah, you can enjoy them. You can put them in some ice cream or something. So a little Black History moment. We're gonna talk about Benjamin Banneker. He's an African American scientist, surveyor, mathematician, astronomer, farmer, and naturalist. A lot of people know him for his, astronomy work as well as his mathematician work, but a lot of people don't know that he actually was recorded brood 10, which is the brood that actually comes here in Ohio. He actually uh, was one of the first scientists to study this particular brood of cicadas. And so he first recorded his first experience with them in 1749 when he was a 17-year-old teenager. And it was, like I said, it was brood 10. He experienced their emergence a few more times every 17 years. He began to predict when they would emerge based off prime numbers 13 and 17. Like I said, he's one of the first scientists to record this insect's life cycle. Um, and so, like I said, him being a mathematician, he studied prime numbers, and he had did all these studies and stuff on these actual cicadas. Um, but a lot of people don't know that. They only know him about about the other things that he did, like with the clock and the prime numbers and things. But he actually was one of the scientists that came up with. He was able to calculate when they would actually emerge based off prime numbers. So I thought I would throw that Black History moment in here because that's very important. Take this off of here so you guys can see that we know that we've had an impact in history for a long time, and because of him, we have these cycles. Like I said, that was that one scientist that came up with the different broods, but there wasn't a lot of scientists that were actually, charting every 17 years or every 13 years these broods. So he was one of those scientists that did. All right, so that's the end of the presentation about cicadas. Just talk about Kiwi Produce school website again. I actually I'm gonna have a copy of my article I wrote in the Dirt magazine about cicadas about 2 years ago. So if you want to download it and read it, you can. It talks about the actual periodical cicada. It has some pictures and things like that. I actually wrote it the year that they emerged here. We had a straggler group emerge here. Um, and so I'll put some links that you can actually go and see maps, and there's a whole website dedicated to all the broods and when they're going to emerge, and they can give you schedules and when they're going to have stragglers, which are some that emerge earlier than what they're supposed to. Also, so in 2017, we had some stragglers that are actually, they should have been emerging in 2021, but they came out in 17. So they came out 4 years early. So it wasn't as many as it's going to be next year. So I'm probably going to have to do this presentation again next year because it's going to be a lot of them next year. So just warning you guys now. But you don't have to think anything to worry about. Like I said, they don't bite, they don't sting, they don't emit any toxins or anything. You can enjoy them, you can study them, you can actually eat them if you want to. It's up to you. But if you go to the school website, you'll find that article. You'll also find other classes and courses and things that I offer. You'll also find links to the Sunday lives that I do and information that I talk about in there. You can actually go there and get that information. And here's this page. If you need to contact me, you can contact me by email, urbanfarmsister@gmail.com, or you can find me on social media. You can send me a message on there. You can also visit my business website, which is kiwiproduce.farm. I need to put AgriAcademy on here. That's the nonprofit. And also the school website. If you have any questions, like I said, you can email me and things like that. I just wanted to show you guys how to pick them up if you actually have one land on you and you're in one of these areas. So like I said, I have some specimens here. So this one is a female. Basically you can just hold them like this. Their wings they'll be back for the most part, and you just grab them by the wings here and you hold them like this, and you can, if they're on your clothes or something, you can just pick them up like that, and then you just, if you're holding your hand up, they'll just fly away. And this is what the exoskeletons look like. If I can do that. So this is what you usually find on the trees and the blades of grass when they've emerged. And what they'll do is they will shed this exoskeleton. This is what will be left on those trees and things. And it'll be like, millions of these exoskeletons, and they eventually break down. Insects and other decomposers will come in and actually feed on them, and they're actually a good source of nitrogen that you can use in the garden and things. You can bury them in there, and things like different microorganisms in the soil, as well as arthropods, will come in and they will break them down, and they will return that nitrogen back to the soil. So these are good sources of nutrients for plants. Same thing with the cicadas. When they all die, you're going to have lots of dead cicadas, and they can smell kind of bad. But you can also use them, you put them in the compost and things. They will break down. Like I said, microorganisms and things will break them down, and they will return those nutrients back to the soil. So anybody else have any questions before I get on out of here? Any questions about cicadas? Any questions about entomology? Any questions about any other insects? I'm probably gonna do some more lives about some other insects that you guys are probably gonna encounter if you're out gardening or farming. So I'll do some lives about those. Especially things like maybe tomato hornworms or tobacco hornworms, things like that. I might even do one about lady beetles because people still don't know what lady beetle larvae look like, and so they're always constantly killing them, not realizing that they have lady beetles already in their yards and things. So yo folks said stragglers, but I thought temperature played an important part when they appeared. Yes, so the stragglers, the temperature plays a part. They're still going to come out when the ground temperatures are 64 degrees, but they're coming out. They're not emerging with the big brood. They're coming out earlier than the brood would normally emerge. So they're still going to, like the ones that came out in 2017, they still came out in, early, mid-May when they started coming out when ground temperatures were at 64 degrees. So temperature still going to play a role in that. They're not going to come out in the winter. They're not going to come out in the fall. They're going to come out, when those ground temperatures warm up to that 64 degrees. And then usually if there's a rain, they will come out then. But when I say stragglers, that means they just emerged a year or, a few years prior than the actual brood that they should be part of emerges. And then it also, like I said, it wasn't a lot of people studying these, and they've been doing this for forever. Like, so that could be, those stragglers could be just another brood that, I told you there were 30 that they knew of, but there could have been other broods that they didn't know of. So they're thinking like these are stragglers, but these could actually be broods that, are just emerging. They just don't have an actual number, and they just kind of lump them with another brood. For the most part, though, the 13 year and the 17 years, they kind of don't ever overlap emergence. Usually the 13 years will come out when they're supposed to, and the 17 years will come out. Every now and then there can be some overlap, but for the most part, they have their own time frames that they come out. They kind of keep that out, that 13, 17 years separate, so you don't have all of these emerging at once. That would be like, now that probably would be stressful on trees if you had like multiple broods emerging at once. And then, that could have an impact on the environment and things like that. So yo folks wants to know, can I elaborate right quick about shrimps or crustaceans being insects? Yes. So back in the presentation at the beginning, I talked about, see if I can go back. Basically, insects, um, crustaceans, let's see here. Insects, crustaceans, spiders, centipedes, millipedes, they all fall under this order called arthropoda. I'm sorry, phylum Arthropoda. So they're all arthropods. So that's why they're all related. Now, when you go and you break arthropods down, then you have different classes. So then you have class Insecta, which has insects. You have class Crustacea, which actually has the crustaceans. So crustaceans are shrimps, lobsters, um, I can't think of crustaceans right now. Things like peel bugs, or the roly polies, they fall under crustaceans, things like that. So they're all under the phylum Arthropods. So they're all arthropods. They're just in different classes. So that's how they're related. Like they're like cousins. So maybe I need to do explaining arthropods live about that and how to break those down and why shrimp are related to insects and things. Now, when people say shrimps are roaches, and then they're going too far. I've seen that type of stuff on the internet. Oh, I didn't even have this screen up. Hold on. So this is when I talked about the arthropods, class Arthropoda. Phylum Arthropoda, class Insecta has insects, class crustacea has the crustaceans, and then class valva, that would have things like clams and oysters and things like that. But they're all fall under that same or phylum. So any other questions, comments, concerns? Are cicadas a danger to undeveloped farming countries? Undeveloped farming. Cicadas are not dangerous. I don't. What part of the presentation did you come in? Did you? When you say danger, what do you mean by danger? I'm not understanding your question. Are they gonna destroy vegetation? If that's what you're asking, no. They don't have chewing mouth parts, so they don't eat leaves and things like the locust would do. I talked about locusts at the end. I talked about how locusts are actually grasshoppers and they will defoliate vegetation, whether it be trees, crops, and things like that. Cicadas are not locusts. They're in their own order of insects called Hemiptera, which they make them true bugs, and they have piercing, sucking mouth parts. So they suck sap from trees, but they do not feed on vegetation from trees. So they would never do what a locust would do. Locusts are usually, docile. What happens is their resources get depleted, and they start to overcrowd, and then they become aggressive. They'll actually start to eat each other, and when they get to that point, that's when they actually swarm. They'll actually undergo this whole transformation. They'll change colors and everything. The locust will, and they'll develop those wings, and then that's when they will actually swarm and they'll fly in those huge numbers of like millions of them, and they'll just wipe out any vegetation that's in there. Um, you can actually eat locusts as well, and actually they talk about eating locusts in the Bible. So you can eat locusts if you read the Bible and things like that. They actually talk about because they're wiping out all the vegetation that people would eat, they had to have some other form of food. So locusts were an approved food back then, that you could consume. Like I say, when it comes with locusts too, just make sure you take off the legs and you remove the wings. But you can eat them. Yeah, I talked about locusts at the end. I did little questions. There we go. That's a locust at the top of here, and this is a cicada down here. They don't drain the tree, so yo folks want to know: do they drain the tree? No, they usually feed on trees that are very mature, so their little bit of feeding is not going to drain the tree. Now, if it's a sapling, and I talked about that earlier, you might want to cover the sapling up because that could, cause damage. It could stunt the sapling's growth and things. But you can cover it with insect netting, and that can prevent them from accessing saplings. But if a tree is like advanced in age, that little bit of um, cicada feeding was not going to affect them. And like I said, they're only around for a few weeks, and then all the adults die off. And then, like I said, the nymphs go underground and they'll feed on large roots underground. They'll suck the sap from those roots, or not necessarily sap at that point. It's juices that the roots have in them. Okay. So if you have any other questions, you can send me an email. I've exceeded my time again. I'm only supposed to do this for an hour. I try to stay in an hour. But I like talking about insects and stuff and all this science stuff. So I always go over. But if you have any questions, you can email me again, urbanfarmsister@gmail.com. I thank you guys for tuning in to another one of my lessons here. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already. Also, if you'd like to become a patron so I can keep this content coming, please do so by visiting patreon.com/urban farm sister. That would help out a lot. but I can keep these lessons coming next week. I haven't decided what I'm going to talk about on Sunday. I'm still thinking about that. But for next week, for the agri-science for the kids and the adults that want to learn as well, we're going to talk about wheat, and we're going to talk about corn, and we may talk about oatmeal. So next week's going to be dedicated to grains. All right. So good night, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you sometime in the near future. All right. Be great. Bye.